everyone. My name is Debbie Manville, and I run the 1 Million Diamonds Art Instagram. Today I'm talking with Audrey Stone. Hi, Audrey.
Hey Debbie, how are you? Good to
I'm
see you.
good. I'm good. Um, I wanted to talk to her a little bit about her artwork and also where she started. So she actually has some wonderful images for us to take a look at too today. I'm very excited. So I will ask you, where did you begin your art background and where did it all start for you?
Well, in the very beginning, it started in my bedroom as a little girl, right?
Hmm.
Just making stuff. I was always making stuff, whether it just be out of whatever objects were in my room, creating them into a big roadway around my whole floor, or drawing. I did a lot of drawing and had sketchbooks always. Um, I know that at the age of 9, I said I wanted to be an artist, and by middle school, I had set up a corner of my room to have a studio, like the drafting table, and
Nice.
I took it kind of seriously always. As something that was part of my life and something I needed to do. Um, and I was fortunate to have art teachers in high school who fostered that. Like the room was always open and I could go and explore, try different mediums, made suggestions, that kind of thing.
Which medium did you start in?
Well, drawing, and I did painting and printmaking in high school,
Okay,
and I did get a BFA at Pratt Institute in painting,
nice.
and then I went on and got an MFA in painting at Hunter College. But I ended up doing a lot of different things at Hunter, like sculpture. My thesis ended up being in sculpture. I was
Wow.
doing sculpture out of all sorts of materials. And after Hunter, I was doing sculpture like in Scotch tape and hair and wire and all sorts of things. And I left painting for a long time. Actually, I didn't paint uh, on, for quite a while, and then I eventually got back into it because I was really wanting to explore color intensely. Because the work had just driven me in that direction. I was doing for 5 years or so, I did drawings in thread and ink and pencil.
Oh, wow.
And as that series progressed, I they were very formal. They were grid drawings, and was a whole series. I mean, there's probably like 100 in the whole series. And towards the end of the series, they got very colorful, and the color was something that I really wanted to explore more. I ended up doing some sewn paintings combining thread and paint. And then eventually it was really just the color that I wanted to explore. So I left the thread behind and just went on with color.
Nice. How long ago was that?
Um, well, the drawings, when were they? 90. I did just work in thread actually from like 98 to 2000 and 2000. God, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared with dates, Debbie.
It's okay.
Um, uh, my mind, I'm really bad at that stuff. So I did the just thread works for like 10 years, and that's actually when I had children, because when you have kids, I needed like a material I could come in and out of really quickly, and
Hmm.
like 20 minutes here, 10 minutes there, because that's what it's like when you have a baby. So I needed a very forgiving material. So I got into thread as something I could do. And that whole thing started after reading a short story about making lace and this lost art of making lace. And I wanted to teach myself how to make lace, you know?
Hmm.
So, and then that ended up moving into, I had a show after like 10 years of making those. And it was like, well, I could do another show in 10 years because the things were so damn slow to make. Each piece would take months and months because I was literally like tying little threads together and making knots and weaving thread, like the thread you'd sew a button on
Hmm.
with into a weaving. And so then that became this sewn drawing group. which was the grid series, and that I did for 5 years, and that I ended in 2000 and I want to say 2008.
Okay.
And then the sewn drawings, the paintings came in there, and I did them through like 2013, 2015. Sorry, I was going anyway. And then I mean, my last sewn painting, I did one, I think, in 2017.
Okay.
So while I was still painting, like it just, actually I finished one this year and I auctioned it off on my Instagram. It was a
Okay.
fundraiser. So
Nice.
yeah, it was something that I'd begun a while ago and had always intended to sew. And I never, because I moved studios, I did it in 2016. And I'd moved studios a few years ago out of my house. And then I wanted to do this fundraiser and I wanted to finish the piece that had to do with basically civil rights. So I did the sewing part and I auctioned it off.
Okay. And then you began doing the new works that you're doing now. You started that about 10 years ago?
Painting, exclusively painting in 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because they're beautiful. Would you like to share the screen so that they can see?
Sure. Where are we?
And then you can kind of discuss it as you go and you can kind of show us around a little bit.
Yeah.
Because yours looks so much cleaner than my video. Wonderful.
So I wanted to show you what I'm up to now in the studio.
Okay.
So these are, this is a series that I've been working on since last year, 2015.
Okay.
It's called By Fire, and all the paintings are 40 by 30,
Wow.
and they're sort of like portraits, I feel.
Okay.
Do you know the song "Who by Fire" by Leonard Cohen?
I think I've heard it, but not so well.
Okay, well, that song has been a guide for this series and was part of the inspiration. In 2019, I'm going to get kind of personal. In 2019, I had a lot of loss. I had 6 deaths in friends and family.
Oh my God.
Starting with my mom, as well as my father having a catastrophic fire that his house burned down. And they
Oh
lost
my God.
everything.
I'm so sorry.
That's what happens. Thank you. But so while my mother was terminally ill, she had 2 fatal illnesses. I started thinking about how we die, you know?
Okay.
And this song by Leonard Cohen, "Who by Fire," kept coming into my mind. And the song is also a reflection on the Hebrew poem prayer that's said every year during the Jewish high holidays. It's called the Unatana Tokef.
Okay.
And it's that prayer asks each year who's going to die and who's going to live on in the book of life, basically.
Okay.
The high holidays. So using the song as a guide in some ways, but also kind of doing my own, getting into my own personal stuff and reflecting on contemporary things, I began this series, By Fire. So summer, I call it By Fire. Leonard's song is "Who by Fire." I can read you the lyrics of the song if you'd like to hear. It might be.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So they go, and who by fire, who by water, who in the sunrise, who in the nighttime, who by high ordeal, who by common trial, who in your merry, merry month of May, who by very slow decay, and who shall I say is calling, and who in her lonely slip, who by barbiturate, who in these realms of love, who by something blunt, and who by avalanche, who by powder, who for his greed, and who for his hunger, and who shall I say is calling, and who by brave ascent, who by accident, who in solitude, who in this mirror, who by his lady's command, who by his own hand, who in mortal chains, who in power, and who shall I say is calling. So each of these paintings starts with the word "by" and then has another word with it. So we'll get into a few of them.
Okay.
But the whole series is called By Fire, and it's sort of loosely based on those lyrics, as well as the losses that I experienced. So it's kind of Rosh Hashanah starts tomorrow, so it's kind of interesting that we're having this conversation today. You know,
Happy Rosh Hashanah.
yeah. So I can move. Should I move to the next image?
Go right ahead. I really do like the glow on so many of these. It really does kind of move the eye around.
Mm. Do you have any in particular?
I mean, most of them on that centered piece, with the 8 together, it kind of just keeps making my eye flip around. I really love it. And I
Great.
keep looking through all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see your next slide. We'll go through them. Oh,
So
beautiful.
this is by Fire 2. In the series, there's 3 paintings titled by Fire,
Mhm.
which is the namesake of the whole series. Um, it's flash on raw canvas, so the central strip you see, except for that darker red, is raw canvas, and then it's the flash on that. So this has, I keep coming back to By Fire because the fire was very traumatic for my father and my stepmother. They lost everything, all the heirlooms, everything. And then also thinking about the fires that we're experiencing worldwide in terms of, the California fires, the Australian fires, the Amazon forest fires. There's all these fires everywhere.
Strangely, my best friend from South Jersey actually got in touch with me this morning, sending me images of the condo across the street from her that was on fire last night.
Oh, no.
So it's almost like a strange theme.
Yes. Yeah. It's the first line in Leonard Cohen's song is "Who by Fire," so it's very provocative in a way, I feel. This image is a little dull compared to the real piece, which is a hotter yellow.
Okay.
So I'm sorry that it's a little dull.
That's all right. I love the gradient from how it goes from deep red to kind of back to the yellow.
Yeah. So, I'm really into gradients. That's a lot of my work is about gradient and measuring color gradients. So measuring the color as I go. Yeah, so that's that one. This is by Slip. So what I found in working in this series is that there was sort of a new kind of freedom to explore the ways I was approaching gradient in having this 40 by 30 format and approaching different, to me, themes in a way that I maybe not usually do, like more thematic.
Okay.
So you can see the gradient is kind of, the paint is applied in a more fluttery way.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's got quite a bit of depth.
Yeah. So, and I liked how it's kind of feathery, and that feathery makes me think of flight at the same time. And then slip is like a falling. So Leonard Cohen does have a line, "Who by her lonely slip," this painting is called "By Slip." And 2 people I knew died by falling. So it's kind of that. And then there's raw canvas on the top half of that painting.
Okay.
So that to me was a way of expressing absence, like the void, and where, also I just love raw canvas. So. Always paused. Oh, we went ahead too fast. Let's go back.
There we go.
There we go. This one is by Morning. It's some of them got really subtle. I don't know if you can see the gray gradient at the bottom.
I can.
Good. And it was inspired by one of those really early morning drives in the fog on Country Road, when everything is just the immersed, dense, beautiful fog that's kind of being lit up by the sun, but you can't really see through it. And but except for the trees that come out every now and then. But I found also in working on this series and thinking so intensely about the poem and the prayer, there's a lot about time in it and references to time. So by morning, like the title is kind of like an anticipatory, like what's going to happen by morning, you know?
Mm.
And my painting process itself has a lot of time element to it, I feel. I've always felt, because it's almost like doing gradients is like marking time. Often I will only do one color on a painting a day because
Okay.
I'm working out the color, and sometimes the paint just needs that much time to dry. So each color is like a marker of time in the studio. Sometimes more literally, in that it's a color a day, it's almost like a calendar. And other times where it's just, a marker of moment in time. I start working more in acrylic, which is faster,
Okay.
and that um, that helps it to go more rapidly in terms of dry time and seeing the actual color. Whereas flash, I've done a lot of paintings in flash, and it dries slowly, and the color doesn't really come true until it's fully dry, I found. So I have to wait. Um, uh, and this is by Breath by Air. So in terms of titles, it diverges from the song and the poem, but I was thinking a lot about COVID and how it's transferred by air and by sharing breath, you know.
Mm.
So painted over time of listening a lot about George Floyd and like the absence of air and having your air removed from you. So I was thinking a lot about that. The composition in this one of these concentric cropped rectangles is a recurring composition in my work. So it refers, well, it doesn't refer, but it's closely related to another series, which we'll look at next, called Close. And so it's just something that I've worked with the past few years, is these concentric rectangles that are cropped. But in this one, it comes down and the gray ends up framing the whole piece.
I really love it.
Thank you. I was really pleased with this color combination, actually.
It works out so nicely. It really does. It's got this amazing air to it. It's cool.
Yeah, thanks. Um, I, you know, I mix my colors per painting. It's like I mix as I go,
Okay.
and I plan for paintings. So I sometimes it's very laborious, but at the same time, I feel like I don't know if it's true enough, but maybe it makes the color more specific to the painting. And so anyway, in terms of the paint, this was a new color combination for me, so it's exciting, you know.
No, it's a great one.
Thanks. So here's some from the Close series. On the left is Close to Close, and then there's 3 on the right hanging in the studio. So I wanted to just show these in terms of that concentric rectangular composition that I've worked with a lot. That came from a Ligia Pape drawing,
Okay.
which she drew. It's a pencil drawing, and so where my colors meet, they're too fuzzy to see because the gradients are so
Delicate.
delicate. Yeah, that's where the lines would be for her drawing. So I had taken a photograph of my mother and myself in the glass reflection of her drawing. That was then at the Met Brewer, which was the Met Brewer. It's not that anymore. And I thought, what would that composition look like in color? Because like you could see my mother and I in the reflection, it was like our energy.
Mm-hmm.
So color. I often think of color as energy. and expressing that. And the Close series, kind of a lot of it revolved around my mother's death, actually. And, um, when someone's dying, people often will say, "Oh, are you close? Were you close?" And it's like, well, it made me think about the word close, basically. Because how do you define when you're close to somebody, and what is close anyway? So um, they all have close in the title, honestly. And the close to close, something that I'm also really interested in terms of color with my work is um, having the color be both exciting, like, and calm
Mhm.
at the same time. So it's like there's visual stimulation because of the color, but also perhaps that it's calming. And that's like it's kind of like when you see like a gorgeous butterfly that's just like so brilliant, and you're like, wow, and it's like this slight miracle that's flying across the sky. Um, it's on a long journey, and the color is amazing, but it's it's um, it's also just it's you kind of get a little like, oh, I don't know if you get that.
I get that. I get that for all color.
Yeah, I think too.
Especially with your paintings, because they do have that tension between intense but also the delicate part. You work a gradient better than most people, I feel,
Oh,
because you have that delicateness to yourself, and so you are really good with that stepping gradient. When I do a gradient, it's almost like a heart attack.
well, we all have our hand, right? Like we all have our thing.
We all have our intensities.
Yeah, yeah, and it comes in different, and there's probably different times for different things for each of us, right? So
Sure.
yeah, but yeah, a lot of in my earlier color, I was stepping around a lot from color. It was
Okay.
still sort of, it was like more tonal, but the colors weren't necessarily gradients. And then they became more gradient, and then it became more less like in these, especially this close to close. Um, how smooth and subtle can it be?
That's super subtle. It's super smooth. I love it.
So.
It's like sherbet. I want to eat it.
It is sherbet colors. That's for sure. Can I move on?
Yeah, go ahead.
So then we come to double pour. So I've done a lot of these pour paintings. Pour I consider like the central strip of color or non-color with the saddled by two larger areas of gradient.
Hmm.
So like I said, I have recurring compositions. So that first image of By Fire is kind of like a pour painting in a way too, because it has the central with the two sides. So in this one, obviously, on the one on the right screen is a raw canvas strip up to the
Hmm.
top. They're both on raw canvas. And the one on the left brings the top color down over the whole thing. A little bit of reversal. But I also really enjoy that kind of visual vibration of gradients and of hot color.
Yeah, it's definitely doing it on this one. It's very intense.
Yeah. So, and color, I don't always know exactly how the color is going to go in a piece. Like sometimes I do a study and I have all the color worked out, and I know I'm going to start with gray and I'm going to go to green and then blue and then pink, and that's how it goes. Other times I'm like, well, I'm starting here with this pink, and I'll see where it goes.
It's amazing this one because you do have like you start with the blue on the top and then it becomes warm and then there is a pink magenta, but it's so blue that
Mm,
it fights the orange and also fights the yellow.
mm,
So it's amazingly reverberative. It's constantly reverberating and breathing.
yeah,
This piece really breathes.
yeah. Thank
It's
you.
beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a diptych. I've done a couple of diptychs like this,
How
and
big is that?
each of these are 20 by 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I remember I got to see your work in the city, and it was huge. It
Which
was the show where there were it
oh,
was the group show.
that painting center, right? The big one on
Hmm.
the one on sheetrock,
That thing was amazing. How tall was that?
8 feet. So yeah, it's a slab of sheetrock that leans
It
against the wall.
really took over the wall. I was like,
I wish I had a picture of that.
that was
We'll put it
amazing.
together. That
Maybe
was
maybe I'll just put it into editing. I have pictures from back then, so.
okay, cool. Well, I'll
Mhm.
tell you that it was when I was working on that show, I was talking to the painting center about actually doing a wall painting,
Okay.
and I was hoping it was going to be on the wall, and then because of logistical issues, we couldn't do it on the wall. The timing and who's getting it actually painted in the amount of time I had, and then having the wall completely repaired, blah blah blah. So I said, well, can I do it on sheetrock and bring the wall to the show? So we did that.
It worked out nicely. That was a gorgeous piece.
Thank you. And leaned it against the wall. So I just included one bulge piece, this one, because this I consider, there's another group of my works that I consider I call bulge or flow kind of things, where there's a central shape that kind of overcomes the gradient at some
Mhm.
point. So I kind of think of this shape as a disruptor of the gradient in some way. And yeah, so it's like I like that the color kind of emerges visually, but then the shape also emerges from the color.
You do have a lot of mirroring.
Symmetry is a big thing in my work, if you haven't noticed. I really like, I'm doing a lot of symmetrical imagery, that's for sure. Because I'm not sure why, but I think there's like an inherent visual strength in symmetry,
Hmm.
and it just is solid, kind of like it's almost like a numerological thing, like that it's gonna stand in some way. I
It's
don't know.
interesting because a lot of your work comes from the center of the painting too.
Yeah, well, this was actually painted from the outside in. I usually paint either from the inside out, the outside in, the top to the bottom, so like the previous one, you said you'd go from the top to bottom. I actually painted those from the bottom to the top.
Okay.
Um, yeah, most go from either one edge to the other, or um, yeah, or the middle out.
Are you using tape on these?
Yes, a lot of tape. Yeah,
The tape definitely helps.
yeah.
So let me ask you, since we are kind of all limited, has this changed your life for the year with the COVID situation? Did you have any shows lined up or anything like that?
Yeah, well, the By Fire pieces were scheduled to show this fall, and now I don't know when that show is going to be.
Okay.
I had a number of shows lined up, and I'm still waiting to hear a couple of group shows, and the By Fire's a solo show waiting to happen. It will happen, just a question of when. And in a way, it was like, well, one thing I forgot to mention about the By Fire series was that there's going to be 18 altogether,
Okay.
and in Judaism, 18 is the number for life. It's a
Okay.
symbolic number for life. So I was like going on and on and on. I felt like, oh, do I stop at 20? Do I stop at 24? I could stop at 100, whatever. I said, no, you know what? I got to stop at 18 because I want to move on. And I also just like that dealing so like hypothetically thinking about deaths, like to think about life too. Like so.
I love it. It's beautiful.
Thank you. So yeah, so that's postponed. I don't know. It puts a different you know, thing about time, that thing about time right now is very
Hmm.
strange, I think, for most of us. And then, like, if you're a producer like this, like, what are you producing for? But I, as an artist, also, I felt like COVID was kind of not that difficult for me because it's like when we were on total lockdown, I'm saying, even though it was terrifying and I hated hearing the sirens constantly, and it was just so much. And so the whole thing was hard, is and was hard. Um, as an introspective artist type, you know, going to the studio is just kind of like the happy place.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that I was able to continue doing it. I'm in a situation right now where my studio is a walk from my house and is private. So I was able to continue to go, which was a blessing to get out of the house.
That's
And
good. Yeah, I know a whole bunch of people that couldn't get into their studio during
yeah, awful.
COVID.
It was awful. I can't imagine what that would be. I also have seen a lot of other kinds of work from people because of that, which is kind of cool. You know, like watercolors from home or
Do you feel like your mind or anything has shifted or transformed during the quarantine?
so much more anxious than I was.
Really?
What?
You are? I'm kind of more calm about everything. I'm just like whatever.
Really? No,
Hmm.
I'm pretty anxious. I mean, I was less anxious when we were on total lockdown because I knew what the parameters were, you know?
It's
And
the great unknown.
yeah, and now that everything is, you know, the boundaries are all kind of like wobbly
Hmm.
and uncertain, like that just makes me kind of more nervous. But I forgot what your question was.
I don't really think I think you answered it.
Okay.
Well, Audrey, thank you so much for showing me some of your work today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And
Thanks for the time and the
oh,
chat. It's kind of like a treat to actually, even though we're not in person, we're having a little FaceTime here.
no, I'm always glad to take a look at your work because it's always so glowy and beautiful. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks for the opportunity.